Today I'm going to talk about the final project I did for the web development program at Madison College. Now I'm actually in two programs at Madison College. I'm graduating this week with cybersecurity and web development. And I decided to kind of bring these two together in the final semester as I developed a web application that is able to process data from a security scanning application called Nessus. So for those not familiar with Nessus, it is an enterprise-grade cybersecurity vulnerability scanning application. It's used by a lot of different organizations to identify weaknesses in their networks and also just to do a general inventory of their networks, what machines are on the networks, what the kind of structure of it is, and everything like that. And Nessus is used a lot by penetration testers. It's used by incident response teams. It's used by all sorts of folks. And of course, being a software developer also, there was an opportunity I learned about here to process the data coming out of the Nessus API. In the past, there was a Python script which was doing this, but that script has been deprecated, is no longer maintained, and doesn't work anymore. And that script was specifically designed to process the data for use in Splunk, which is another enterprise-grade database that is it's a new NoSQL database that's used to process a lot of security-related information, especially like sysmon information and network information. Active Directory stuff, things of that nature. In any case, Nessus is one of the things that would be really useful in Splunk, but currently is not able to get that data in there. So I wrote this application to fix this problem. Is I've got this Nessus installation here, and I'm going to log into this, and we're going to see just some of the scans that were done that we did in this class on, these fictionalized systems. And like I said, this is not real production information, but this is the kind of things you might see in a real production system. You might see some vulnerabilities related to various Windows patches that haven't been applied. Sometimes you see things that are a little more innocuous, not necessarily indication of vulnerability, but just like, oh, we found this host here, okay, they responded to a ping, great. Now, in order to access this data, you have to access the Nessus API, and I'm just going to show you an example of what this looks like. There's an initial, what I'm calling an index response. It just has kind of an index of all the scans that are saved on the Nessus installation, including the folders that store those scans. So let's just take one example here. ID number 22. And we see a whole slew of information. This is actually a lot of that same information we were looking at over in the web browser user interface. When we get down here to the various hosts that it's scanning, we can see the severity levels and the counts of different severity levels for that host. We'll see the IP address, the Nessus plugins, and these talk about the nature of the vulnerabilities they're scanning for. A host ID that we have to use. In this case, it's a host ID 3. So we'll go hosts 3. And now we get a listing of the vulnerabilities that were found on this host. And so processing all this data is actually not a trivial task. And that is why I built this application. This is a Java application. It was written for my Enterprise Java class. It has a pretty extensive framework that I've developed here. with a bunch of different classes representing the different entities in the Nessus API, and a database that accompanies it. I am using the Hibernate Object Relational Model, ORM. I'm using MySQL as the database, and I'm using Jackson for the JSON serialization, deserialization, and I am using Jersey as the HTTP client. Now I have here an example configuration file for running this application. And of course there's a database here too that accompanies it that has all of these different tables that store this information and help us with processing it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is reset the database so that we are starting with a clean slate with this example data coming in. We are going to go fetch all the data from the Nessus API and process it into files that will be ready for ingestion into a Splunk index. All right, now that that is done processing, let's go take a look at the results. Wow, look at these JSON files. Wow, so this is some pretty dense JSON. A little hard to read if it's not pretty printed, but once this is ingested into Splunk, it becomes a lot more usable. I'm going to show you that next. Alright, so here we are in Splunk, and we are looking at those same records now, but they're a little more usable here. Now, you're like, okay, well this is cool, but this is kind of like a little difficult to utilize if you're looking at a lot of different data, because look at it, there's all, you get the same thing for every single one of them. So that's where Splunk is really powerful, because it lets you do special kinds of queries, like for example, I could turn this into a table and look at it in a different format. Oh, there we go. Nice, okay. So this is just an example of how this could be useful in a cybersecurity setting, processing Nessus data, formatting it for use in Splunk, or possibly in other types of databases. So I hope that this was an informative little demonstration of my application, and hopefully it can be of some use to various cybersecurity teams in the future. So one last thing I was going to mention is that we are running this now in a real production Nessus environment, and this is a Nessus production server that has data going back 7 years. And over this past weekend we processed all of that data, and after a little bit of debugging I was able to get this application running really efficiently. It was able to process 7 years worth of data in about 8 hours. So I think this could be a really useful application for a lot of different cybersecurity teams. And if there's anyone that's interested in collaborating on developing it further to give it more functionality, let me know, because that's something I would be interested in. Thanks.